Hello, my name is Cho and welcome to another episode of the Shiny Review. Today we're going to be talking about the Green Light Ready Go banner featuring PSSR 1 Fujiko, SSR 3 Chiyoko, and SSR 4 Natsuha as the event card. But we'll also be talking about the Rerun Christmas event featuring SSR 4 Mono, as well as SSR 1 Kokanee. Moving right along, we have SSR Fujiko. After what felt like a short time since May's initial SSR, Fujiko arrives to complete the first set of SSRs for Stray Light. As if keeping in theme of their story, Fujiko functions nothing like Asahi or May, and chooses to operate more like a Hokago card with a few buffs slapped on for the bare minimum. It's unfortunate that Fujiko's memory appeal is weaker than many initial SSRs that have come way before her. I mean, just look at Kaho 1 or Chiyuki 1. And you will need to be ready to invest heavily into Fujiko, as well as May and Asahi, in order to make this team really work at all. Which is harder considering that Fujiko's banner does not have stamps or a spark, so it might be much harder for you to find extra copies of Fujiko. Her roles are center and buffer. As for her skills, her initial skill is a visual 3x appeal that applies 2 buffs. One is a dance visual 10% buff for 3 turns, and the other is a dance visual 5% buff for 5 turns. And her link appeal is a dance visual 50% buff for 4 turns. The 4-star version of this appeal is a dance 4 that applies vocal dance 10% for 5 turns, a vocal dance 5% for 10 turns, and the link appeal is vocal dance 50% for 4 turns. Her passives are a visual 25% and attention 25% up if the unit includes Fujiko, has a 20% chance to activate 5 times. She also has a 2-star passive, which is a dance 40% and attention 40%, that has the exact same activation requirement, activation rate, and number of times it can activate. Her uncap at 3-star is a visual plus 200, and her memory appeal is a vocal dance visual 1x appeal with a link appeal of vocal dance visual 20% up for 8 turns. Overall, this card is okay. Not particularly amazing, and it's very clear that she has to really run on Stray Light in order to make the most of her appeals at all. The buffs are relatively lackluster on other teams, and if you're missing out on the link appeal, you might miss out on having a reasonable amount of damage behind Stray Light appeals. The passives are totally fine if the 20% activation rate doesn't scare you away. She's really good as a leader because of this, but then you fall into the issue of not necessarily having a good center. And since her memory appeal isn't exactly the strongest thing in her kit either, it's a little rough. For recommended supports, Fujiko has 2 support approaches, as a generalist, or one more focused on setting up the Asahi Bomb, which we'll talk about in a bit. Mix and match your best supports of all 3 appeal types in the former, or focus specifically on vocal dance with an emphasis on vocal for the latter. If you need appeals, look for active buffs. So cards like SSR Meguru or SSR Hiyori are fantastic for this card, of course. Those cards are busted, they're super strong, they're dumb as hell. If you need active buffs, look no further than SSR May, SR Asahi, or SSR Jury. The rest are just reasonably strong cards for each of the attributes, so check them out as you see fit. For her team, Stray Light's SSRs are your only option to take full advantage of Fujiko's buffing. The SRs are even more dysfunctional than the SSRs and will lead to more headaches than anything else. So if you're trying to utilize SR Asahi, especially Event Asahi, or SR Mays, they don't quite work as well. And so it's very clear that you have to run all 3 of these SSRs to make the most of it. Also, sorry for having the wrong Fujiko icon. Don't have the card, and I wasn't able to find any information for the card icon at the time of this recording. So be very ready to have all 3 of these cards at 4-star if you want them to really stand a chance. Their gimmick of having to remove their own buffs in order to maximize damage is very hard to work with, but also limits them to basically only having Rinzai or Chiyoko cards as their necessary backups. So team restrictions are very high here. You gotta do your best in order to make this team really work out, and sometimes it's not as good as you could hope. Now, one thing we've been talking about is this Asahi Bomb, but what exactly is it? Well, here I have 2 example situations demonstrated. The first is utilizing SSR Fujiko's support appeal, which is a visual 3.0 that applies 2 separate buffs. A vocal dance visual 7% and a visual 5%. If we go through each of these, the one on the left is what I think is a pretty reasonable rotation of turns, and this is ideal. Since you can't exactly stack the deck in shiny colors, this is essentially what sounds like one of the better turn rotations for the team. On the first turn, you would have Mei use the support Fujiko appeal. Turn 2, Asahi would do the same thing. This leaves you with 2 vocal buffs, 2 dance buffs, and 4 visual buffs. So visual is already ready to go. On turn 3, Fujiko uses her 3-star appeal, which is a dance 4.0, as we talked about before, and gives you 4 active buffs on each of the 3 main stats, which sets up for turn 4 perfectly, as Asahi uses her 4-star appeal to have a maximum damage vocal 11, alongside a vocal 79% buff that turns into a vocal 99% buff. The end result is a vocal 20.49 times appeal, so 20.5 more or less. The other skill rotation was actually recommended by Pluie on the Discord, featuring Mei's 4-star appeal to start things off, which applies 2 separate dance buffs to equal 15%. Turn 2 uses Fujiko's 0-star appeal, which does visual damage and applies those visual and dance buffs, which puts you at 4 dance, 2 visual, 0 vocal. On turn 3, any of your idols, if they've been in TFD, might have access to a skill called Motivation Charge. It applies a vocal 100% buff to you and all rivals, or 150% if you land perfect. Which then leads into turn 4, where Asahi uses her vocal appeal again, now with a stronger vocal buff, but less visual buffs to take advantage of the Stray Light scaling. It still results in a stronger appeal, but puts you in a worse situation since your rivals are still buffed up with a vocal 150%. Vocal 24, or vocal 20.5, are certainly more than enough to completely obliterate a vocal judge if it's been left alone. So this is essentially Stray Light's main goal, to set up Asahi to do an insane amount of damage, but then kind of leaves himself wide open for the rest of the run. Overall, Fujiko is a B as a center and as a unit. You run her as center because there's no other choice for Stray Light at this point, really. If you are opting for the leader Fujiko to take advantage of her buffs, then you find yourself in an even worse position as the memory appeals are even weaker than this Fujiko's appeal. If her Link appeal buff was stronger, on the memory appeal specifically, or the appeal scaled with active buffs, she'd be much better, but otherwise she feels very lackluster for current day. And as a unit, she's debatably the worst of the initial Stray Light SSRs, and Fujiko more or less exists to set up Asahi to do damage. You blow everything for one gigantic appeal, and then you're a sitting duck for the rest of the match. So, for Stray Light, good luck with your SSR2s or limited SSRs, where we'll probably see these cards make their real splash on the game. Moving forward, the other card of the banner is Chiyoko, an SR support. Finally, we get to talk about a nice card today. Chiyoko's latest SR is fully invested into visual this time, and serves to be a reasonable substitute over her SSR version, if you lack the additional copies. A generally useful support skill mastery in Visual Mastery Visual, and comes with all the Hokago bells and whistles you've come to expect. Her skills are Idol's Bond, which reaches level 7 at 70, so 35 points there, which grants a small bonus to her damage. Visual Mastery Visual, which caps out at level 9 at 65, which is a fairly generous amount of visual for an SR. She also has Promise Recover at level 3, Rest Boost at level 1, and Trouble Guard at level 3. For passives and skill, a visual 15% buff if you're in the visual position, 30% chance to activate one time. 2-star passive is a visual 40% up if the turn count is 3 or less, 30% activation rate one time. For 3-star uncap is a visual of plus 50, and her appeal is a visual 3.5 that applies attention up for 2 turns, as well as mental damage up for 2 turns, both at 50%. Remember that attention is essentially a taunt, and mental damage is more or less a defense modifier, so this reduces your defense by 50%. Overall, the card gets an A+. One thing you can always guarantee is that every gacha support Hokago card is very good. Chiyoko doesn't break the mold here, and comes with a great 2-star passive, strong appeal, and having plus 9 on her Room Mastery means you can very quickly gain tons of visual. She's definitely the real winner of the banner. And quickly moving to the event, we have Natsuha, a new support SR for her. Our event card this time around is another support SR, this time for Natsuha. Amazingly, Hokago continues the streak by even having an event card feel reasonably powerful compared to many gacha SR, making the grind feel worthwhile for 4-star. Definitely pick Natsuha up if you're looking for an extra vocal card to carry in your back pocket. Her skills are Idol's Bond, level 4, when the card reaches level 70, which is relatively low, but okay to work with. Vocal Mastery Vocal, which reaches plus 9 at level 65, and is definitely one of the highlights for her. She also has Promise Recovery, Rest Boost, and Trouble Guard. The levels of these are so low that it doesn't really matter. You mostly look at this card for Vocal Mastery Vocal, as well as her passives and skill. Her 1-star passive is a Vocal 12% up if your card is in the Vocal position, 30% chance to activate 1 time. The 2-star passive is a Vocal 30% up with a mental damage 30% up if the turn count is 3 or less, 30% chance to activate 1 time. Her uncap is a Vocal plus 50, and her 4-star skill is a Vocal 3 appeal that applies a mental damage 50% up for 3 turns. As a card, she gets an A. Very simple but effective passives combined with easy activation requirements, a 3x appeal, and a reasonably powerful Vocal Mastery at +9 for a free unit? Absolutely. Natsuha's good, and worth considering if you're looking for a final vocal support to round out a lineup. If you're missing the other vocal Natsuha support, she's a very reasonable substitute. Now to shift gears, we're going to be looking at the Rerun cards, starting with Mono Sakuragi, Hajimari no Epilogue. Turning back the clock a year, Christmas Mono has made her return to shiny colors. Initially being a backup vocal support in case you hadn't pulled Osoroi Snap Mono, many players found Event Mono to be surprisingly useful for many vocal teams. Another Shiny Colors YouTuber, Meibatsu, particularly likes this card for true ends. Having a scaling vocal appeal and a reasonably powerful set of support masteries lended to an overall good card. Today, she's a bit more rare to see, but still welcome to vocal setups that lack a mono, especially if you're looking for a card to help you through true ends. Her skills are Idol's Bond, which reaches level 5 at level 70, Vocal Mastery Vocal, which goes up to +8 at level 80, Promise Recovery level 2, Rest Boost level 2, and Vocal Mastery Stamina level 4 when the card reaches level 75. As a reminder, stamina skills are, if they are in the room they designate, they reduce the amount of stamina it costs to be in the room. Lessons cost 10 stamina. Vocal Mastery Stamina 4 reduces the stamina cost by 12, so you technically earn roughly 2 stamina for Mono being in the room if she's level 75. On top of earning the additional vocal, makes it very easy for you to hang out in the vocal room for a long time. Her 1-star passive is a Vocal 18% up if your card's in the vocal position, has a 30% chance to activate 1 time. Her 2-star passive is a Vocal 30% up if the turn is 3 or less, has a 30% chance to activate 1 time. Her uncap is a Vocal plus 50, which is usually the downfall of a lot of support SSRs from events. And her 4-star appeal is a Vocal 2.5 that applies a 3-turn Vocal 20% up buff. Overall, this card gets a B+ if she is lower leveled, and A- if you have her all the way to level 80. If you ever wanted to see the baseline for a good event SSR, Mono's your girl. A reasonable enough appeal, though initial SR Chiyoko has the exact same appeal, solid passives, and a strong enough set of support skills. Having access to a stamina mastery is very crucial to this Mono being as good as she is. She's worth leveling to utilize for different teams, especially if you need vocal. And the last card today is Kokanee, the world's strongest. Koga-Tree. Koga-Tree, as we love to call her, has some merit with Radio Mastery Visual and has some interesting utility for visual teams with her damage cut appeal and passive. We all graciously wait for the day that Koga-Tree is added as a costume for unlock. Her skills are Idol's Bond, which reaches level 4, Radio Mastery Visual, which goes up to 5, and which is okay, Promise Recovery level 2, Rest Boost level 1, and Trouble Guard level 3. For passives and skills, at 1-star, she has a visual 15% up if you're in the visual position, has the standard 30% activation rate 1-time max use. Her 2-star passive is a little different, however, with a visual 20% up as well as mental damage cut of 10% as long as you're at half health or lower, 30% chance to activate 1 time. Her uncap is a visual plus 50, and her 4-star appeal is a visual 2 that applies a 2-turn mental damage cut of 20%. So reducing damage is the name of the game with this card. Koga-Tree gets a B. Koga-Tree isn't quite at the same speed she used to be a year ago, but she might still find a home on visual teams that are looking for damage cuts. Maybe for Visual Alstro or Antika? Probably. Her radio mastery is appreciated, and can be useful in specific wing runs. And that's the end of the video. Thank you for watching as always. If you like what you saw, feel free to hit that subscription button and hit like on the video. It helps us know if we're doing things right. And make sure to share it around. Let the people know what we're trying to do by bringing you more Shiny Colors content. Otherwise, we will see you next time for the next banner, whatever it may be. I've been Cho, thanks for watching, and have a wonderful rest of your day.